Namaste. My name is Preity Upala, and I am a global thought leader and a multimedia personality. Welcome to my podcast, The Preity Experience. Join me as I explore some of the most fascinating and crucial issues that affect our world today. I take a unique global perspective on these issues, and the very foundation of my insights is humanity and spirituality. I'm Preity Upala, and welcome to the Preity Experience.
Good morning, all, and good evening to you, ma'am. Even though it is probably late night there. Today we have with us Miss Preity Upala. I hope I spelled that right. She is a actress, a thought leader, a political commenter, and she has joined here today with us to discuss the India-US relations for the next decade and how both countries can cooperate and collaborate towards a better world. So thank you, ma'am, for joining us today. And now you can continue. Once you are done with your initial thoughts, then we can have a continuous dialogue.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much to YUVA Leads Foundation for inviting me to this amazing session. I'm thrilled to be here. I'll just give you a very, very brief introduction about myself so you know a little bit about my background and where I'm coming from. My name is Preity Upala. I am from Sydney, Australia originally, but I live in Los Angeles, California now, and I've been here for several years. I'm a former investment banker turned Hollywood producer turned entrepreneur here. I do many things. I work in the film industry, but I also work in media and politics. I have my own radio show called The Eternal Hour, and you can find it online. I also have my news show called The Preity Experience, and you can actually find that on YouTube. So apart from these, I write for many, many outlets. And I write specifically on geopolitics, international relations, US India relations, conflict, religion, peace, all those interesting topics. I also happen to be a Dharma ambassador, which means that I speak and write on Sanatana Dharma, Vedic philosophy, and Indian or Indic spirituality. I'm writing my first book. It's going to be on Shakti. So I urge all of you to, keep in touch with me because I think you'll enjoy the book. It's probably something that might align with your own views on feminism and female empowerment. I'm sure it's an Indic look at this topic of female empowerment. And then obviously I speak around the world. I've spoken at sort of Women's Economic Forum, the WEF, Horasis, and all kinds of interesting panels and conferences. I worked with a few think tanks as well in India and America, and I just continue to, do all of these things that I'm passionate about. All right, so that's a little bit about me, and I will get started on my talk, which is the U.S.-India relations for the next decade. So I truly think that this relationship is a very special one. And I think for the next several decades, say for the next 50 years, it will be the most crucial alliance, strategic alliance in the world because of many reasons. So before I get to how I see that panning out, I actually want to talk about how the relationship has been so far, because it hasn't actually been as rosy as one might expect. So there are three factors in determining relationship between two nations. You look at military, you look at trade, and you look at governance. So let's look at the governance aspect because that's, I think, the easiest one of the three in the case of India and the US. They're both open liberal democracies. So, open market and so on. I think from a governance perspective, we don't have a problem there. I think they're very aligned, very much aligned. The second one, of course, is trade. So currently, the trade between these two countries is about 150 billion. Funnily enough, it's actually in the favor of India. So India has a $20 billion surplus, which is very interesting. And much of this surplus and even the trade that, the exports from India to the US happen to be in the technology development and service industry. That's really a strong point. So 150 is pretty healthy. I think it could be double or triple that. There's several reasons why it's not any more than 150 billion, but definitely it's not bad at all. And the third one, of course, is the military. Now, it's only recently that the U.S. Military and Navy has been exercising a lot with the Indian Navy and military. In fact, I think the U.S. Navy exercises the most with Indian Navy than anybody else in the world, right? So this is great. I think they're finally coming to a point where they realize that they have to work together. This relationship has been pretty tumultuous, actually. One would think that they should have a much stronger military alignment as well, but post independence, sort of during the Cold War era, because India took such a non aligned point of view or stand diplomatically, it wasn't able to join with NATO and the US powers, and it actually got closer to the Soviet Union and then eventually to Russia, which is adversarial to the US. So we've been sort of stuck in this love affair, I think, where I think both the US and Russia would love to have us on their side, but we've been with, I think, Russia for the longest time, and recently we started flirting a little bit with the US. I think even from our part, because we've been burned in the past, we are trying to not, I don't think we want to be hurt again. So I think we're trying to be wise about this relationship. But moving forward, I do think that the US is going to be very important for it. We have started buying advanced American military equipment. We never used to for the longest time, and now we're buying quite a bit. In fact, the recent visit by President of the United States to India for that famous Namaste event in the Motera Stadium, it actually ended with a $3 billion sale of these MH 60 and Apache helicopters sold from the US to India. So it's certainly that's pretty legitimate. And but we always have to think about, at the end of the day, the bottom line is, if there is a war, if we get involved in a conflict, if we get attacked, is the US going to be there for us? Because they haven't always been there. When you look back at 1971 or in the 60s, they not only didn't help us, in the case of 91, they were thwarting us. They were actually the adversary there. We decisively won that war, which was helpful for us. But we don't have a great history of them actually helping us and coming to our rescue. I think times have changed, and I think also the relationship between the leaders of these two countries is also quite different than it used to be several decades ago. So let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of this relationship. The good, definitely, they're the political system, right? They're both democracies, liberal, they're both sort of secular in their own way, open market, capitalistic environment, market-driven economy for us since 1991. Second point is technology. The USP of the United States is technological advance, right? And the USP of India is actually also technological development and services. So this is where they really align quite a bit. And I think the US feels very comfortable in collaborating with India for their technological needs. even on the very highest levels. So I think India becomes very attractive to them, whereas there's other emerging um, economies that just don't. Also, the English language, I think we must never forget, we are the second largest English speaking population in the world. Hopefully, one day we will be number one. I hope that day is coming soon. But having a English speaking, savvy, hip, young, hardworking, dynamic workforce, which we do have, is extremely appealing to a lot of the Western nations, including the US. So this can only get better. Of course, then there are shared values, I think, whether it's education, value, tradition, even having, I think we're both people of faith, right? And the moral compass is very similar. So that we have that in common and also shared threads. I have always said this, that the two most important global threats to the world, to our planet, are number one is the rising imperialistic China, and the second is this rise of um, Islamic religious terrorism. That's about it. They really affect the world at large, and we are at war with both of them. Uh, Kind of a bit more subversive, I would say. But I think both India and the US knows all too well about both of these issues. Now, uh, in a sort of relationship, uh, we, so those are the good things. But then let's look at some of the bad things, because that's where the issue is. Uh, and that's where really our problems come from. So the first one is international alliance. I think for some reason it shouldn't be the case, but our greatest weakness has been this kind of non-aligned movement or non-aligned stance that we've had, but also our ability to. Uh, this should be a good thing. Our ability to get along with everyone. We are friends with everyone. We don't have enemies. We're not attacking and hurting countries. We haven't instigated wars. We're not a terror nation. We have no desire to expand, and also we're not spreading our faith around. So this should be a good thing. But the problem with that is because we can have alliances across the board, the adversaries don't like it. So a great example is Iran. We have had a deep, long, sort of civilizational relationship with Iran that goes back quite a long time. And so when the US comes in and says you have to, cut this tie, it puts us in a precarious situation. Because I don't really think anybody can dictate who we can be friends with and who we cannot be. But if we want to get closer to the US, which ultimately in the long run is going to be more beneficial to us, I think we have to make these very difficult calls. I think in the end we will make the right call, but it's not easy. I think we're stuck between a rock and a hard place in a way. So Iran is a great example where we used to import what 80% of our energy needs from them. 60% was like in crude oil alone, and we got this for a very, very good price. And since the US has come in, now we're buying it from them, and our imports from Iran has gone down uh, dramatically. I think we have to be very careful. I think this is a relationship that we must nurture and keep. Um, we have this port in Chabahar, which will become very um, crucial for us, I think, in the geopolitical scheme of things. So I think having Iran as an ally is actually very important for us, vis-a-vis Afghanistan and Pakistan and all this other stuff brewing right now in the region. That port might become very important. So I think we can't sort of turn, our backs on them and cut that relationship off. Obviously, the second big one is the Soviet Union. I think we've always enjoyed a great relationship. During the 71 wars and also in the 60s, the only country, or one of the few countries that came to our rescue, actually was, um, well, what's Russia now? So, they supplied us with missile systems and armaments, equipment, all sorts of things. They were there for us, and we decisively won all of these wars. So we have the people that came through for us, I think we have them to thank as well. And we cannot forget that, especially when the whole world abandoned obviously, they're very adversarial to the U.S. I mean, this current administration has better ties with Russia. That only helps, I think. I think we have a Russia having a good relationship with the U.S. I think India's happier. Everybody is happier that way. I think that Russia has an unbreakable history with India in a way that can't be sort of pushed away. Um, and then I obviously the big elephant in the room. And I hope one day this won't be the elephant in the room, but for now it still is, of course, is our neighbor, Pakistan. So, vis-a-vis Pakistan, I think the US and India have had an extremely antagonistic relationship. The US foreign policy has been atrocious for us. I think we have been the victims of very, very bad policy where we just found the US giving billions in aid to Pakistan, which ended up using it for their nuclear program and for their uh, terror economy. I don't know how many people know this, but their entire economy is run by the military. The military runs the country. It's an artificial state, it's not a real country. It doesn't really have any identity or it doesn't really stand for anything. It's a country that is run by intelligence and army who have all the power, and it's set up in a way where there's a few people at the top who get a lot of money because everything is funneled through there. So they do very well for themselves, and but the people, obviously, there's zero infrastructure. It's extremely poor. It's very dangerous. It's a terrible place for minorities, women, um, people of minority religions, and people from the LGBT community and so on. I mean, it's kind of a global example of a failed state in a way. But the US keeps giving it billions. And guess what they do? They in turn train the jihadis and the militants and insurgency groups, and also they support and prop up the Afghan Taliban, which end up killing US troops in the thousands. So at some point, the US needs to wake up, I think, from this slumber, because this has been an issue of contention for us. And I think for us to have better relationships with the US at some point, we need this. It really needs to be sorted. I think one of the big problems is that the US thinks that whatever's happening between Pakistan and India is an Indian problem. It's a kind of an well, in some ways it is. Uh, I think Kashmir is a bilateral issue, or really it's an internal issue in India. But just looking at these two countries when they don't agree, the U.S. just thinks that that's India's problem, and even the cross-border terrorism that India faces an Indian issue, but it's actually not, because these uh, terrorists uh, are involved in global terrorism activities. They get recruited into all groups and they all around the world. So I think the U.S. it really needs to wake up and smell the coffee as far as all of this is concerned. Post 9/11, they've opened up their eyes a little bit, but I still think that they don't have a good understanding of this problem. Uh, the recent Afghan peace deal, again, a very, very horrible deal. I cannot believe that somebody could sign this, because when you leave, which they're planning to do, you're going to be leaving a big vacuum there for thousands of terrorists, jihadi elements to come in. The Taliban is going to take over the whole country, and this Afghanistan has a democratically elected government, which by the way is very sound. They have their own military, which is very capable. But when you have Taliban that comes in, there's little that gets done, and then the people become the victim, and that area becomes again a war zone. That's it's famously said that that's the area where empires go to die, because nobody has ever actually won. So in signing this peace deal, essentially the U.S. has admitted that it has lost and that it surrendered everything to the enemy. And I don't even honestly know that think that they realize that. because they have great pride in their army, but when you think about what have they won, they haven't won too many. Um, the recent purchase of the S-400 from Russia is another matter of contention. Obviously, the U.S. is not happy about this. I think the U.S. Technology, as their defense systems are actually very, very good. They're of very superior quality, so it would be more useful. It would be better for India, I think, to have the best equipment possible because we have very well trained, personnel and pilots and so on. But we sometimes have very worn out old systems. So I think if we had updated systems, it would help a great deal. Uh, I think the S-400 is perhaps because we are buying so many other things from the US. It's okay, and in the future, I think I have a feeling we might be buying a lot more equipment from the US anyway, so it will balance out that issue. Um, the other issue, of course, is the H-1B1 visa. I mean, the US has extremely strict immigration policies, which I totally understand. I think in India we have a serious immigration issue. We have a migration problem, right? So we know about border control and illegal migration and so on. We are the biggest victims of that, I think, in the world. The US also has a big problem. So I support the US in having strict border control and cracking down on illegal migration. However, I think they need to make a differentiation between good immigration and bad immigration. And the problem here is that sometimes they don't do that. They look at, the Indian doctor or the Indian tech professional that comes in to help them because they don't have skilled people, and they certainly don't have the level of skill that's needed. I think just in the technological sector, I think the quality is very high of our workers, and they're very educated as well. And there's a dearth of that uh, here. So they really need to understand that we are doing them a favor, and this is a good thing for them, right? Because guess what? This professional, if he can't go to America, he will go to Canada, he'll go to Germany, he'll go to New Zealand, Australia, the UK, and they're doing that. And some of them might even stay back in India and set up a startup and make billions. This is happening already. Actually, I think India is one of the startup capitals in the world, and half of Silicon Valley is run by Indian startups anyway. So I think there's a need for U.S. government administration, so on, to really wake up and look at the nuances of the situation. So I want to see immigration reforms as far as H-1B1 is concerned. I think that they should be letting more people in, and they should be increasing their terms and make them feel comfortable and welcome, and award them. I think what they're doing actually makes America great again. So this is pretty much some of the main issues. Look, another issue is that in a dynamic, in any dynamic between two countries, you always have a big power, and then you have like sort of a junior partner. In most relationships, the U.S. is the big power, and other countries, including Japan or whatever, they're all seen as the junior partners. In the case of India, well, certainly the economy is smaller, but I don't think that India really looks at itself as a junior partner to anyone. I'm not so sure it is a junior partner. I think it's really a standalone entity in many ways, doing kind of has something special, its special place in the world and also in civilizational history, I think. So, I think the US can't expect India to just fall into line. They can't dictate our alliances. They can't dictate who can do business with. They can't dictate domestic policy. We're not going to do things just because to keep them happy. And I certainly don't think that the US should be interfering in the internal politics and drama of India. whether it's Kashmir or whether it's any multitude of issues. They don't really have a right to, ask for things to be overturned or make a big fuss about it because we don't do that to them. And trust me, there's plenty of things wrong in America where, I think we could even give them very good advice, but we don't do that as a courtesy. And I think we should not be expecting that from them. But as alliances, as allies, we wish them the best. We want to see them grow because that only helps us. And even the US needs to realize that a strong India is actually better for them. A weak India makes China stronger, and I don't think they want that. I think in the Asian region, they prefer one great power. Um, so, you know, we do see them as a stabilizing power in the world, and they also see us as a stabilizing power. Um, I recently um, was reading this about uh, specific numbers with trade, and I thought it was very impressive. So I do want to read it out because I think you would enjoy it, hearing about some of these facts. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, which is a global think tank, these are some of the numbers that it came up. So trade has quadrupled to 150 billion between these two countries since the last 10 years. Um, India has cleared 286 projects worth 97 billion in recent years. Indian companies have invested 50 billion in the US, 350 million of which are in research and development alone. There has been a recent Indian aircraft defense contract signed, which has created 40,000 jobs in the US. So a fair dialogue should take place considering India's priorities and concerns. Demonizing the climate of doing business in India by US companies could end up being counterproductive. Our Ministry of External Affairs often has some great quotes and statements that it makes. And Dr. Subramaniam Jayashankar recently said that if you look at the growth areas of this relationship, the ability and willingness to work together is there. I do see and hear in America that wants very much a partnership based management of world affairs. Um, Once we have a political and military comfort level, we can come into any situation with harmony and can collaborate on many global initiatives, whether they're humanitarian or counterterrorism exercises. Relationships are never easy, but the grand strategy underwriting our ties is fundamentally sound. Relationships need maintenance from time to time and sometimes even an upgrade. Similarly, the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo of the US has also said great friends are bound to have differences. Um, you know, he's he's committed, and he says that he does. Um, he's committed to ensure that India has the um, capability to uphold its territorial integrity, and including that there is intelligence and counterterrorism uh, information sharing between the countries to fight Islamic terrorism. He also admits that China's BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, comes not just with strings attached, but with shackles. So he understands that both leaders want prosperity for both countries and that the United States stands by India's safety needs, that both countries will plot a path forward. I think if COVID has shown anything, it's shown us that India is the kind of superpower or emerging power that the world needs. I think it's made the whole world get even more suspicious and more critical of China, and they actually see India as a much more moral and stabilizing power. And I do think that it's time for India to step up and take a real leadership position on the global stage. I think the world is waiting for it to be more than what it has been, quite frankly. And I think that India is more than just a shoulder for the US to take aim at China with, right? I think it has enormous things to offer in terms of whether it's safety, security, technology, space. You know, NASA, the ISRO is the second best space program in the world, second only to NASA. And I'm sure that they both will be working together for future missions. AI, in the area of AI and research, I think, again, both countries are working hard. In the example of Big Pharma as well, I think we supply huge number of the world's pharmaceutical needs, and we could be even the number one manufacturing hub. Certainly, we could do that, and I think countries would be much more um, comfortable, getting pharmaceutical needs met by power like India than with China, considering what has just happened. I think what I see is that optics are great. I just think that we need results and we need some policy changes and action. What we don't have is a strong lobby here. We see other smaller countries have much more stronger lobbies, and they end up being able to sort of push a narrative, which isn't always even sincere, but they are able to do it because they invest a lot of money in the lobby. We don't do that. It's left for the sort of the Indian American citizen to sort of explain things or justify actions of the government of India, which I don't think is be their job, and it kind of puts a lot of pressure and burden on the Indian American. Um, this election will have an enormous effect, I think, on India moving forward, depending on who wins. So I think we have to brace ourselves and just kind of hope and pray that the right person who is pro India ends up winning. Um, Due to the size, population, and rising influence in the world, I think India is too great a power for America to ignore and even the world to ignore. So I think that this relationship really is going to be the most strategic uh, alliance in the next several decades. Uh, the US is an indivisible ally of, and India is an indivisible ally of the US. History compels and destiny beckons that these two great powers will dance with each other in the future. So this is my talk on this topic. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got a lot of information. I gave you, I spoke a lot. I said a lot of things. I gave you a lot of facts and kind of said a lot of numbers. But I'm here to answer all your questions. So please go ahead and let me know your comments, feedback, and any questions that you have. But thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving such a great information about India-US relationships in the past and now.
Yes.
If anyone has any questions, they can ask in the chat, and I will open up the chat and I will ask you the questions if someone asks from the current audience. But we do have some questions from the people who have signed up but could not join the session. So one of the questions that was asked by one of the participants was that if you look at the current situation which China has directly or indirectly caused due to the virus, how do you look at a combination of US, because it is the most badly affected, US, India, Russia, and Japan kind of boxing out China to start being more open about the things that they are doing? Because one of the major problems with China is that they do not allow anyone to come in to inspect any of their doings, and also that they steal everything in terms of whether it is intellectual property from other countries. So do you think all of these countries, major countries, for example US, India,
Mhm.
Russia, Japan, could kind of put up diplomatic pressure, militaristic pressure, trade pressure for that matter, to force China to start being more open about their doings in the world?
Okay, very good question. Firstly, Russia is not going to be one of those countries that's going to be holding China accountable. So just so you know, because they're both communist, right? So they are also very sort of not very transparent in their own dealings. So, but yes, I think it's time for the West, and with countries like India and Japan, I would say, the really the it's the Quad. I think the Quad, which is the U.S., India, Australia, and Japan. These four countries really are proving themselves to be responsible, moral, and stable. And I think that they're uh, kind of holding the world accountable. So I really think that it rests on them to uh, at least open a conversation. Now, Australia has been really, I mean, I'm from Australia originally. I'm an Australian citizen. So I spent all my childhood there. But I'm very proud that they have been one of those only countries, I think, that has really put their foot down. I mean, it's a tiny country of 25 million, but their prime minister, their government, everybody has completely kind of invalidated China in a way. Because in Australia, what's happening is this has been happening for the last 30 years. China has been buying up they own the casinos there. They own the they're owning media houses. They're owning so many things that are that aren't even Australian anymore. So I think Australia knows when the Chinese come and buy, they actually feel kind of victimized and alienated in their own home. This is, I think, because Australia knows that, they put their foot down. I think the West must do the same. I don't know, but I think India is in a weird situation because, uh, on the one hand, I'm sure we know all too well, what China's doing, and especially we have this border issue. We have enough headaches from them. But the other thing is that I just feel that I think that these other countries, Japan, Australia, and the US might, and maybe the UK as well, actually, it might be more effective for them to put their foot down and hold China accountable rather than only India having the big, like, broadcasting that and kind of, calling China out. I think we need to tread a little carefully with our relationship with them because I know we can all say what we want, but our economy and our future and prosperity actually depends on their cooperation with us too, because we do so much business with them, and we also import a lot from them. And until that changes, they're not going anywhere, right? It is really going to be the manufacturing hub of the world for a long time to come. Sadly, that's just the way things are set up. We're so dependent on them. Even if we wanted to stop uh, buying things from them, where are we going to go? There is no other country that can rival. There are some smaller countries that are putting up a good fight, but it's not the same thing, and they are not a replacement, right? So we have to bear that in mind. But I think it's time for the West to, the US really needs to do something about this. Uh, I don't know about sanctions because that would also affect trade and all that stuff. But you fining, I don't know, but I mean, they have a debt, if but some sort of debt situation with China. Well, this would be the time where you could kind of negotiate a few things. But we do have to hold them accountable. I think UN, the WHO, and all these international institutions really need to do their bit by holding I mean, for the last 4 months, the whole world economy has come to a stop and nobody's asking any questions, right? So I don't think it's okay that they're getting a free pass from maybe the biggest disaster that we've gone through. It's very bizarre. It doesn't make sense at all. So I think when things settle down a little bit, there will be questions asked. And I think India can support the other countries. I don't want to see it be the main voice, though, because we are already kind of having an adversarial kind of relationship with them. And the worse that gets, it actually hurts us more. And we also don't want them attacking us in any way because they are capable of that.
The next question that we had from our participants was, uh, Indians are probably the highest number of students that go to US for their masters. to take further
Mhm.
education and so on and so forth. Do you see more academic collaboration between institutes in India, for example, IITs, NITs, and academic institutions in US? Because US academic institutions are much higher when it comes to innovation, are much better when it comes to research. So, do you think there can be increased collaboration, increased joint ventures, which focus on innovation, research into manufacturing, into vaccines probably, and into medicines?
They should yeah, they should collaborate. I think in India you have what you have is a great pool of young, tech savvy, hip, dynamic, hardworking, English speaking talent pool that you don't find anywhere else, right? So that's a big plus. And yes, it's the highest number of students, graduate students happen to come from America, and also Indian Americans are also the most educated and the wealthiest ethnic group in America as well. So these things are all good things, but the problem is the U.S. education system and the Indian education system are very different. I know we have so many smart people and so many hardworking students. They're so smart, right? I would say they're incomparable in many ways, but the way that the education system is set up in India, they it's more sort of it's a lot of information. It's theory, it's technical stuff. You don't have things like critical thinking or creative. I mean, yes, technological creativeness, yes, but uh, just the free thinking and taking risks and all that. So I think I don't know about collaborations between universities, but I see more and more Indian students being welcomed in India for to study, to work, to do research and all that. And I do see uh, private, research institutions working with private research institutions in India, and I see pharmaceutical companies working together and technological companies working together. So I think this is going to be business to business. It won't be uh, it, university to university. I think I just don't think that the level is there, even though we have some fantastic universities. I mean, maybe with the MBA section, things could be a little different. I think also the government needs to do a better job at promoting our top, MBA schools, IIT schools, because at the very top, they really are uh, something very, very special. And you do have the smartest of the smart kids, I would say, around the world, right? I mean, these the kind of talent that comes out, they end up becoming CEOs of the biggest companies in the world. So we have it. I think the government needs to do a better job at sort of pitching and marketing these institutions. I don't think they've done that at all, right? So I think that needs to be done. So maybe kind of a rebranding of what we have, because I think what we have is very good, but it's just not seen as what they want, but they could benefit greatly from it. So I think it's a matter of rebranding and kind of repackaging it and make it look very attractive to the US.
The next question that we have from our participants is, if you see most of the US companies shifted to manufacturing in China because the cost of manufacturing there was very low. And what this crisis has shown us is that China is not kind of really reliable when it comes to supporting other countries. We have seen numerous cases of China holding on to crucial medical supplies and then selling it on to other European countries. So, do you think US my companies which are having their base of manufacturing in China would probably shift to India or neighboring countries? We have Vietnam as a neighboring country. We have Myanmar. These countries, which are on a similar level when it comes to cost wise for the US companies, so that the cost does not really increase when shifting. So, what is your opinion on that? Because Japan already has been started, giving benefits to the companies that are shifting out of China. So, do you think US should adopt a similar policy of moving their companies out of China to some other better democratic countries which are more open to things.
Yeah. So good question. I think the whole world would like to do that. I think everybody would love to pull out of China, and there's another imaginary country out there which offers everything that China does, and without all the drama, I'm sure they would jump at it. The problem is it doesn't exist, right? I think we are so deeply entrenched with this global supply chain as far as China is concerned. It's going to be very tricky to pull out. I know everybody says that they want to. And yes, I think Vietnam, Taiwan, and some other countries have managed to get a little bit of the fallout. It's not a lot. I think majority, because it's just set up so well, I think, in China. They have, whatever labor laws that they have and the price and all that just kind of works. I think with India, I don't think it wants to, and I don't think it should aim to be a manufacturing hub at all, because I don't think that that's where our strengths lie. I think we really are, we should be the data provider for the world, or the technological hub of the world, technological innovation hub of the world, maybe pharmaceutical and science technology. There are so many other things, and also soft power, right? There's so many other things we can do where we really could be this incredible force in the world, and also economically we could benefit enormously. But just being a straight up manufacturing replacement, I don't think we are set up for that. I also don't think that that's where we are. That's where who we are. I think we're so much more than that, and I don't think anyone can compete with China because they've been doing this for so long. Uh, but I think some, and also Japan has offered incentives, but still very few countries have shifted to Japan, right? So some countries, I think Vietnam, Taiwan, Thailand, they've benefited a little bit. India, I think they've picked up a couple. It's not as much as it could. So again, this is where the government needs to do a good job of marketing and pitching, because this is the time when I think everybody's a bit vulnerable, and you wanted to, kind of take advantage of the situation and show yourself as a good alternative. At least try, because I don't think I mean, you aim for you shoot for the stars, and then you might land somewhere, right, on the moon or whatever. So, uh, you know, we need to do a better job at sort of pitching ourselves, at least in some sectors. And I'm the problem also with Southeast Asia is they're all competing amongst themselves, right? So it's great to say that it's shifted away from China, but then if it goes from China to Vietnam, how does that help us? It doesn't help us at all, right? It only helps us if it comes to India. So I think we have our work cut out for us. I think we should focus on our strength, but I think better effort needs to be made than what has been made as far as making India attractive. We have serious problems with labor laws and all sorts of, making it easy for them. I'm sure there's plenty of companies that would love to move to India, but they are so difficult. They're still very, very. They're not that friendly to foreign investment and so on. I know it's better than before, but it's not as smooth as it could be. And if you make it very easy, they will come. So I think this is on us. I don't think we can blame anyone if nobody's coming. I think we can do a much better job at making it more easier for companies to ship.
I will ask you one last question if we are running short on time. Uh, this question is from one of the participants. China has done this Belt and Road initiative where they are loaning out money to poor countries, you could say, in Africa, and right. Do you think India and US can collaborate together and help these countries out of those loan debts? Because you see an example of Australia, like you gave some time ago. They just go there, give that investment, and the Chinese then take over the entire place. We have seen similar examples in the Pakistan, the port of Gwadar. They have kind of taken it over. So, do you think India and US should collaborate to help these countries out? by actually giving aid which helps them and not kind of catch them in this loan debt thing wherein all the benefits actually go to the Chinese companies.
Okay, so this is great. I'm so glad you asked me this question because I just wrote a piece for the Jerusalem Post as well as Foreign Policy magazine about CPEC. So CPEC is the China Pakistan Economic Corridor. It's the flagship uh, program, let's say, of the BRI, which is the Belt and Road Initiative. And I actually wrote quite a piece on why it's a corridor to nowhere. It's a failure. It will not work out, you know. And so I think that we can have satisfaction that I know what they're doing is terrible. They're essentially loaning countries, loaning money to countries that they know cannot pay it back, and in the process, they will own it. And these countries are completely falling for it because they've got very corrupt leadership who are able to sell the country, to put, you know, kind of throw the country under the bus. So this is that's why Africa was apart, and of course you have countries like Pakistan that would sell anything to anyone, right, for the right price. So we shouldn't be worried about the CPEC because it's way over. It's sort of running over resources or it's over budget. Only a quarter of the projects supposed to have been built. They're running into a lot of problems. Their internal economy, the Pakistani economy, is I think growing at some ridiculously low rate, and now even more so. Their inflation is like at an all-time high. Their deficits are soaring. They have so many issues, with the CPEC projects. Also, I know Pakistan is made up essentially of 4 or 5 different regions together, but you've got Balochistan that it wants to break free. You've got this uh, KP area, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area. They actually have a lot of resistance to this CPEC thing. There are people even within Pakistan that are not happy with any of this. And even China is not happy because they feel that things are being stalled. So the good news is that I don't think this whole BRI CPEC thing in the end will be feasible. So that's good. However, it's not okay that they're doing it. Also, the Gilgit Baltistan, which is part of the POK, that is technically Indian land. So if they really try to build some, whatever they want to build on it, we have a case that I think we should seriously pursue. And I just feel that the POK region at some point will return because that's really a part of the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, right? That's not another country that we are trying to claim. That's a part of our state that we lost. And shockingly, we never tried to get it back. So I think the POK thing will come back. But I don't think that US and India should be financially helping, Africa or subcontinent South Asian countries. I don't think that's the answer. Then it'll end up being a little BRI on its own. I think instead what they should do is India and the US uh, should come together and collaborate on maybe their own version of it. And the Indo-Pacific, this new thing that has come up, I think this is great. I think this, and it used to be Asia Pacific, but now it's Indo Pacific. And I think the US is genuinely interested in aligning with India as far as the South China Seas and the Indian Ocean is concerned, because what China is doing there is not okay. And even the US doesn't like it. And I think that's where they really see India as an ally, is with the seas and all that, right? With their navy and this whole Indo-Pacific thing will be very good. So I think that we could work with the U.S. And may have, some mutual infrastructure or projects like that. The CPEC, I don't think will be a big success. I think BRI, you just hope that it falters at some point. Because I think even COVID and all that has also stalled it. And it's just, I think this whole COVID thing has ended up being a big self goal for China, to be honest, because it has left a very bad taste in everybody's mouth about it. People don't trust it. They never liked, nobody ever liked China anyway, except for 2 or 3 rogue nations, right? But now nobody likes it, and they dislike it even more. And this only helps India. I think we have to realize that even if we don't do anything, our sort of stocks have gone up just by being India, and being by not being China in a way. Um, so to your question, I don't think U.S. and India should be financially getting involved in Africa or the subcontinent area, but they can work themselves on various projects. And I think with the POK thing, we have a case to really take that to international courts and make a big hoo-ha of it, make a big drama spectacle out of it, because it really is Indian land. And even the UN will back us up on that, right? Because even the UN resolution of Kashmir actually accepts that land as original Indian land. And when you look at the resolution, the first step is that Pakistan needs to vacate that whole area completely, right? And then India will come in and retake it, and then they'll have this so-called plebiscite vote, which will never, I mean, this will never come to pass. But their first step is, vacating the POK area from Pakistani, tribals and in people. So they accept that it's really Indian. So that's my answer to you. I think that's a positive for all of us.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we'll wrap it up today because it is very late at your place as well. Thank you for taking this session today. We had a lot of good points to discuss on the India-US relationships, and we hope that all of our participants who are watching this now or later when the video goes live get to know a lot more from this. And we were very happy to have you with us, and we hope that future sessions, in one of the future sessions, you come back again and you discuss some other topics with us as well. Thank you, ma'am.
Great. Before we leave, I just want to take 2 minutes and let all of you know where you can find me, because I'm everywhere. I would be so thrilled if you get in touch. Facebook, it's Preity Upala. My YouTube channel, if you just type in Preity Upala or the Preity Experience, I have a channel with a lot of content. Please subscribe and watch those great interviews and videos. I give away a lot of information, and find my articles online. Just type in my name, it will pop up. On Twitter, it's at Preity Upala, and the Instagram is Preity, PREITYU. Just reach out to me. I just love to hear from all of you, and I just love to engage. So thank you so much again for having me. It's such an honor, and I look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll be sharing some of your videos with our UALI members as well, so that they're able to understand geopolitical nature. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.